Hi, welcome to Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So today I'm going to discuss my favourite session solos of all time. So what's a session solo? That's when a session guitarist comes in and lays down a solo for a song, usually a pop track or a soft rock track. So studio musicians were particularly prevalent in the 1960s, 70s and particularly the 80s. As the 90s went on, I guess there was less call for guitar solos in pop songs and so on. These days session guitarists tend to do things remotely, but first call session players in the studio scene, particularly in the 80s and 70s, would do loads of recordings, often in one day or over the week, 2 sessions a day, morning and afternoon. And some very famous guitar players started out as session players before going into bands or going solo or becoming producers and so on. Firstly, I'll get one out of the way. I'm not going to pick Beat It on this, and the simple reason for that is Eddie Van Halen's not a session guitarist. He did the session for Beat It, Michael Jackson. It's a very famous solo, but he wasn't a studio musician. So this is, musicians who are renowned for that, principally American. I'm not going to put these in any order, but I will pick my favourite one. So you can't really talk about session guitar playing without the word Steely Dan. Steely Dan is synonymous with session musicians, and the quality of the recording comes from the fact that they picked such great musicians who can just capture a great sound at the source in 1 or 2 takes. It wasn't unusual for Steely Dan to sometimes re-record tracks with different musicians when they weren't happy with the vibe, and their sort of sonic purity is still coveted by producers and so on. So I was one really famous Steely Dan session solo, and a famous session guitarist is Jay Graydon's solo for Peg. I'm not going to pick this one, but it's a really interesting solo. I'm not saying I like it totally, but it's got a weird sort of unison bend thing to start off. Just a very odd solo. Check it out, it's interesting. But the principal Steely Dan session guy, of course, is Larry Carlton. Now, Larry Carlton's probably, to me, one of the de facto session guitarists of all time, maybe the de facto one. It was alleged, a friend of mine once told me that he was on quadruple rate. He was so sought after in his heyday in the 70s, 80s. He would get 4 times the usual rate. So typical session musicians are paid like a union rate. There's a kind of set fee for like a 3-hour morning session, 3 or 4 hours. If it goes into the next period of time, they'll get paid for the next half of the day, as it were, full day. I think they can get paid by the hour as well. I'm not sure what it's like now. But Kid Charlemagne would be the initial choice people would pick, and it's a great solo on that track by Steely Dan. But for me, and a lot of people, it's his intro solo to Don't Take Me Alive by Steely Dan off the Royal Scam album. This is an amazing lead break because it just confounds expectation. He doesn't do the note selections, he doesn't do the things that other guitarists would do, but it completely fits in the vibe of Steely Dan. So Steely Dan used a lot of nice jazz voicings, a lot of smoothness, smooth pop jazz. They call it yacht rock now, and Carlton just sits in with that great. He's got a great tone. He's got great vibrato. He plays just what the track needs, and it feels to me like he's probably done this in 1 or 2 takes. It starts with like an interesting chord, and then he comes in. If you're interested in checking out more Larry Carlton, check out his debut album. A couple of dodgy vocal tracks aside, it's got some beautiful playing. I need to dive in more to him, but you've got to have that in there. So that's my number 1 choice. My next choice is by another. I didn't find out until recently this guy did this solo, but I always loved this track in the 80s. The production's pretty bad now, but the solo's absolutely ripping. So it's a pop rock track by Stevie Nicks. It's I Can't Wait from 1985. And Mike Landau, again, probably the second biggest sort of session guitarist in this period, along with another guy who'll appear. Amazing solo, and again it's that thing where they just this solo is just very short and to the point. It's very explosive. Typically I think in that era people wanted rock solos in coming off Beat It, really, because they wanted that flavour, they wanted that mix of genres, and putting a rock solo in a pop song, R&B song, whatever, would give it that flavour. Next one I'm going to go for makes good use of a typical session guitarist's arsenal, which is a whammy bar, and solos with whammy bar slurring are very popular. If you're interested in this, there was a British session player called Keith Moore. I think he might have passed away recently, but don't quote me on that. And he did a couple of solos. He did one for Five Star, Get Out of My Life, and Jackie Graham, I think, Step Right Up. Check those out. Not massively keen on them, but they use the whammy slurring technique. But this one is Don't Look Down Girl by Go West. Great song. Everyone knows we close our eyes, but in actual fact, Don't Look Down Girl is just as good. And Alan Murphy, rest in peace, did the solo for this, I believe. Really cool, sort of Holdsworthy slurring. I think the use of the whammy bar and the slurring for session players, they would have come from a very skulk background. They'd probably be into jazz, into fusion, and then they've got to kind of temper their habits a bit to play the sessions, but they can still get in that Holdsworthian technique. But Alan Murphy was probably the top, one of the top, if not the top, UK session players. Next one I'm going for is a solo by a guy. If you go on YouTube, you'll find his YouTube channel. This is a great guy, great player. He was principally known as being Rick Springfield's guitarist, but he was also a first call session player and still is, but he does it remotely now, I think, and it's Tim Pierce. And this is the solo for Runaway by Bon Jovi. So if you weren't aware, you put on the Bon Jovi track Runaway, you'd think the solo was Richie Zambora, but early on I kind of twigged that doesn't sound like Richie Zambora. No offence to Richie Zambora, I think he's a good player, particularly back in the day, but he wasn't as good as this solo. And when you check on the credits, you'll see that John Bon Jovi did it with a group of session musicians, and Tim Pierce cut the solo for this. It's a great solo, it's just got great phrasing bends. The way it builds, it's perfectly constructed, and it uses a bit of speed at the end to generate excitement. Really good. Next one I'm going to go for is, I don't know who, I've heard the solo for this was done by a guy called Guy Mandude. I don't think that was his real name. Guy Mandude did a solo album called Sleight of Hand back in the day. I bought it, I wasn't massively keen, but he was a drummer first and foremost, but his first time by Robin Beck. If you want in a sort of stylistic touchstone for this, it kind of sounds like Key Marcello to me. If you listen to Key Marcello solos out in this World by Europe, he's got the thick neck pickup tone. It's a very good solo from a really good song. So this is my next choice. Going into another female singer now, and I'm going to go for From This Moment by Shania Twain. I always thought it was Dan Huff for some reason, but I don't think it is, and I haven't checked who it is. But I love this solo. Again, it's so short, it's so simple, but the tone, the delivery, the note selection is just absolutely spot on. As is the next solo, a short, sweet one by Eddie Martinez. This is his solo for Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer. Love the way it gets into pinch harmonics, and it does that. Can't remember, I don't think it's the major six at the end of the kind of Dorian mode. But again, these players often use a modal elements in their playing, like the Tim Pierce solo to Runaway uses a nice Dorian tonality on one bit, uses the major six, and this one does, and it's just got a really cool vibe to it. Lots of pocket, again, confounds expectation, uses the pinch harmonics as well, which is interesting, which is the popular thing for 80s sort of metal soloing. Next one I'm going to go for is, there's actually two kind of almost session solos for this. One is not done by a session player, but it's Whitesnake, Here I Go Again. So the 1987 versions, there's two versions of this. John Sykes, for some reason, though he did cut a solo, didn't like it. By the time it came to sort of redoing things, he'd fallen out of the situation. Adrian Vandenberg cut a solo, and that's the one with the keyboard intro, and that's the one people know. A lot of people don't like it. It's okay. You could be mistaken for thinking it's Sykes because he's got a very wide vibrato. But some people don't like the note selection. But if you listen to the 87 remix, which comes straight in with some pedaling apes on a guitar, which Keith Olsen got this guitarist to do, it's got a lovely solo. It's Dan Huff. So Dan Huff, upon another famous guy who's going to turn up soon, upon him sort of not doing as many sessions, Dan Huff became the go-to rock guy, and also doing the kind of eighth note delay sort of parts for Michael Jackson on later recordings. But his solo on Here I Go Again 87 remix is great. Just perfect phrasing. Dan Huff's an amazing player. Next one is I'm going to go for is Baker Street, Jerry Rafferty. So this is by Hugh Burns. So everyone knows the sax work on this, but Burns comes in with that great that really piercing bend, and again it just fits the bill. Really good bends, really good phrasing. Hugh Burns did acoustic work for George Michael's Faith, lots of other stuff. But this is a great little lead break, and it just intertwines really well with the sax part, and it's part of what makes this song so exciting. Okay, so my top choice of session solo for all time is this one. And when I was a nip, I used to go to my auntie and uncle's, and they had a copy of Lionel Richie's All Night Long. Is it All Night Long album? The track Running with the Night, and knew they had a cool solo by Steve Lukather, and he used to put it on. I love Lukather's breaks on this track. He does that great thing, he bends up and then frets the little note with his little finger, I think. He really cuts loose at the end as well. But it's not my favourite Lukather solo. My favourite is his solo for Physical by Olivia Newton-John. This is just absolutely spot on. And it kind of starts off, I'm not sure what keys this song's in, but if it's in A minor, it starts in the F chord, the sort of Lydian tonality, and then moves to the A minor. It's a lovely change in, because actually it's in C sharp minor. I think it is, yeah. So it starts off over the A major chord and moves to the C sharp minor. It's a lovely tonality. He just plays it great. He does that great pivot, but and I think I even prefer this to Beat It or something. This is absolutely, obviously Van Halen, great. I said that's not a session, but this is my favourite session solo of all time. There's probably other session solos out there. Like I say, when I was younger, it was always exciting. I'd be watching Top of the Pops, and you've got a straight ahead pop track on, and then a ripping solo comes in, and I found it really inspiring. I think what's key about these solos, they all fit the song perfectly. Until like Don't Take Me Alive aside, which is quite a long break really, and unusually starts the song. They're pretty short and to the point. Some like I Can't Wait. The Stevie Nicks one. It's just very short, but just absolutely nail it. But anyway, Lukather takes the prize for this. A guy who's playing like 1,500 records and pretty much became a de facto first call guy when Larry Carlton went into his own work, I think. I could be wrong with that. And then when Lukather kind of started toning down the amount of sessions he did, Dan Huff took over his sort of job. But anyway, that is the end of that. Remember, share and subscribe. Tell me your favourite session solos, and see you again.